I welcome everyone in today's session where we will discuss everything about the plagiarism. The today's session is configured to spread the awareness about the plagiarism, which would be a comprehensive guide, for the researchers to avoid such kind of plagiarism cases. Let's begin with the basic definition of what is plagiarism. Plagiarism is known when we copy someone else's ideas or maybe work and then present them as ours without citing them. And when we present them as ours without citing them, which means we copy and we do not give any credit to the original authors. Let's take a look at several types of the plagiarism which we often face. The first plagiarism, the wider category, is divided into the two types. One is called the intentional plagiarism and second one is called the unintentional plagiarism. In intentional plagiarism, the first one is the verbatim plagiarism. We'll go through each type in more detail and we'll cover the comprehensive detail about them. The second one is paraphrasing without citing the sources. Mosaic plagiarism, ghostwriting, self-plagiarism, multi-posting, source plagiarism, inadequate authorship, unethical collaborations, translation without citing the sources. So these are the major types of the intentional plagiarism. Now going forward, there is second type which is called unintentional plagiarism. In unintentional plagiarism, there are several types, such as, let's say, if we forget to cite, incorrect citations. Sometimes by mistake we provide incorrect citations. Often we forget to put the quotation marks. We forget to put the footnotes. Sometimes we gather the information from multiple sources and just stitch them. Often we change the meaning of the original information when paraphrasing. These are the types of unintentional plagiarism. Which we face in a regular research work when we write. Now going forward, let's begin with the intentional plagiarism. Intentional plagiarism is known when author purposefully copies the information, such as, let's say, text, images, diagrams, pictures, charts, data, etc. We copy intentionally without giving the credits to the original sources. That is called intentional plagiarism. On the other hand, unintentional plagiarism says that authors are unaware of writing ethics and they make a mistake or miss it because of the human error. Let's say a student is joining and he's unaware about the plagiarism, and sometimes he may not cite a particular source, or maybe let's say there are 100 of citations and he may forget one or two of them, which is coming under this particular umbrella. It is often called conscious plagiarism because we are knowingly presenting someone else's ideas as ours, whereas unintentional plagiarism is known as unconscious plagiarism because unknowingly we present someone else's ideas or works as ours. As we have discussed the wider types are verbatim plagiarism or direct plagiarism, paraphrasing without citing the sources, mosaic plagiarism, ghostwriting, self-plagiarism, multi-posting, source plagiarism, inadequate authorship, collusion or unethical collaborations, undeclared contribution, translation without citing the sources. These were the types which we had discussed under the umbrella of intentional. In unintentional, often we forget to cite, incorrect citations or source referencing. We forget to quote, we forget to put the footnotes. resource to citer, or we can copy from multiple sources and put it in our document, and incorrect paraphrasing. Let's go through each type slowly and then understand. First wider umbrella was intentional plagiarism. First wider umbrella was intentional plagiarism. Intentional plagiarism happens when authors commit copying of the ideas or information intentionally. Because sometimes we don't want to give the credits to the original sources and we indulge in the copying event intentionally. That is called the intentional plagiarism. First type was verbatim or direct plagiarism. First type was verbatim or a direct plagiarism. Verbatim or direct plagiarism happens when we copy directly, let's say Control C and then Control V, right? Control C and Control V, copy paste it. That is the major idea. When we directly copy from, let's say, some research articles, books, or Wikipedia, online blogs, somewhere, that comes under this particular category. In the verbatim plagiarism, it could be a complete copy or a partial copy also. We may copy the information segments and then put it in our document. We are purposefully copying, could be information such as, let's say, text, it could be an image, could be a diagram, pictures, music, videos, charts, etc. Could be data, everything, right? Let's say if we use a particular data source from kaggle.com or anywhere, we have to cite that data source, that from where we have downloaded data for our studies. And we do not cite. So without citing, if we are taking this directly in our work and publish, that's called verbatim plagiarism. When submitting the assignments, project reports, term papers, etc., students often copy. They copy from, let's say, most favorite sources. They copy from internet. Now, these days, they directly go on ChatGPT, right? Or maybe Gemini AI, which is okay sometimes to use this kind of tools for boosting the efficiency, but ensure that from where the information is coming, we have to cite them. So you may check all the references from where that information is coming and cite them. Sometimes students copy from the friend's work. Let's say someone is writing a lab report and one friend has written a lab report, they copy from that. These days it is getting replaced by this ChatGPT and other things. Solutions: be original and write in your own words. Be original and write in your own words without copying. If possible, always check that you have paraphrased the original borrowed information without changing the meaning, and cite the original source from where we have taken the information. That is the solution to this verbatim plagiarism. Let's see one particular segment. Here you can see this particular information segment, which is highlighted here, both of them, they have been taken from this particular sources. So all these sources you can see, they have been taken from here. And intentionally I copied, I did not do the paraphrasing, and I did not cite even. And after that, I ran it through Turnitin, which is a plagiarism checking software. Turnitin, which is a plagiarism checker, and it has highlighted and said that these are the sources from where we have copied. So it can be easily identified. The solution to this is always be original and write in your own words. Always be original and write in your own words. Paraphrase followed by the citation. So what I have done is I have paraphrased this entire information. Now you can see I have paraphrased this entire information and I have cited this. So you can take a look. I have cited this. So this information has been taken from this particular source, and I have cited this source here. Which means I'm giving the credit. So first I have paraphrased and then I have cited. If you are taking directly, let's say if you are quoting a particular law, the wordings cannot be changed. In that particular case, put the quotation marks followed by the citations. Put the quotation marks followed by the citations. Let's take a look at the next type of the plagiarism. Paraphrasing without citing the sources. We have paraphrased, but we are not citing. That means if I'm borrowing the information, I have rewritten that entire information which I'm borrowing, but for n number of reasons, knowingly, I'm not citing the original source. I'm not citing the original source, right? So I'm not giving the credit. Paraphrasing doesn't mean that information is ours, because it doesn't alter the fact. The original report has been created by someone else, or the original paper, patent, something has been created by someone else. Even if we paraphrase that, we must acknowledge. Even if we paraphrase that, we must acknowledge. So paraphrasing doesn't mean that the information is ours. It doesn't alter the fact that we have copied from someone else's work. We must always acknowledge the original sources. Anti-plagiarism softwares, they may not be able to detect the paraphrase content because I am changing the wording. So it may not be able to detect that paraphrased version. However, the original authors or the publishers, those who are holding the copyrights, they may give the copyright strikes because of the breach of the copyrights, right? Because we haven't cited them. Therefore, always we have to paraphrase and cite that. So paraphrasing can happen from a single source, or as well as it can be from the multiple sources. When we do this paraphrasing and copy it from the multiple sources, that is called mosaic plagiarism or the patchwork. That is called mosaic plagiarism or the patchwork. For an example, now I'll just see that these two information segments are copied from here. These two information segments are copied from this particular sources, right? And I have paraphrased this. So now you can take a look. I have paraphrased this entirely. This entire information segment is been paraphrased. I have paraphrased, right? I have paraphrased. And then I'm running it through the Turnitin. And Turnitin is unable to detect that because I have paraphrased. However, I did not cite any source here. I must cite the sources from where I have borrowed the information. So now the solution to this, we have to be always original. We have to be always original and rewrite in our own word. And then you cite the source from where the information is being taken. And you always cite the source from where the information is being taken, right? So definitely we can refer. However, we have to paraphrase and give the credit to the original source. Without that, it will be considered as a plagiarism. And we may get the copyright strike in future. Paraphrasing using the AI tools. Now these days, scenario is changing. We are using many AI tools for paraphrasing. Now, what is AI assisted paraphrasing? Now, let's say for an example, when we use any of these tools, ChatGPT, any of those tools, we can rewrite the content, and they help really well. We can rewrite the content, maintaining the same meaning. We cannot change the meaning. We have to check that any of the AI tool which we have used, it should not change the meaning of the original information. They help to improve the clarity and avoid the redundancy for sure. However, using any AI generated paraphrasing without crediting the original source is called plagiarism. If we use any of these AI tools and if we do not credit the original source, it is plagiarism. Now, why is this considered as a plagiarism? Number one, failure to credit the original source. The idea remains theirs from where that AI tool is referring. Now we don't know from where that information is coming. So we have to manually verify from where the information is coming. Intellectual theft, changing the words doesn't make that idea ours. Changing the words doesn't make that idea is ours. It will bypass the plagiarism detectors definitely, because any of these AI tool is capable of changing the words and bypass the AI tools. Now these days, that's why we check at AI score, right? Most of the plagiarism tools, such as Turnitin, has this capability, right? Such as Turnitin has this capability. Academic integrity violation, right? When we use it, institutions sometimes they view that the AI which has been used for paraphrasing without citations is a misconduct, is an academic misconduct. So therefore, if you are using AI tools, use it, that is okay. And up to a certain extent, it will help, but ensure that the meaning of the original information is correct, plus all the sources are cited. For an example, let's say AI assisted paraphrasing, right? So this is my original sentence, and this is my source. I feed this to a particular, let's say, AI tool, any of that AI tool, and then it gives me the paraphrased version, but it doesn't cite. There is no citation here. This must be here. There is no citation. Plus, there could be a change in the meaning also. We have to retain the same meaning. If we change the meaning of this information, this person finds and he may give a copyright strike. Now, why is this plagiarism? First, the meaning and the structure, let's say, assume that it is same. However, reference was not given. The reference was not cited here. It must be cited. If it is not cited, which means it's a plagiarism. Now, how to avoid this? How to avoid this? Now, whenever you use any of these AI tools, always cite and cross-check the meaning is correct. Cross-check the meaning is correct, and ensure that AI tools are not the replacement of the critical human thinking. You have to add the human value when you use them. Verify that AI generated content for factual accuracy and the originality. Check that everything is exactly the same, meaning is retained, and follow the institutional guideline on AI usage for academic writings. So let's say if the university or institute says 20% below or 10% below must be the AI score, we have to follow that. Often they say do not use AI. In that case, better not to use that. Better not to use that. Next type, let's check is what is mosaic plagiarism. What is mosaic plagiarism? In mosaic plagiarism, when we assemble multiple text segments from various sources without citing the sources, right? Let's say I have 10 research papers. Let's say these are analogous to multiple research papers. You can say multiple research papers, right? Some of the information I'll take it from one paper, then one paper, another one, then little bit of information I'll take it from multiple papers, and then stuff it. And I do not cite it. I paraphrase it also, but I do not acknowledge the original sources. Therefore, always cite the sources wherever we are borrowing the information after paraphrasing. Wherever the information is borrowed after paraphrasing, and sometimes we just list all the sources at the end of the reference list. Which is insufficient, which is not sufficient. We must cite that borrowed information wherever it is applicable and relevant. Wherever it is applicable and relevant. Such as, let's say, this is the case, all these highlighted information segments are copied from so and so number of sources, right? Are copied from so and so number of sources. So now, when I run it through the plagiarism software, it will highlight and say these are the copied version. But let's say even if I paraphrase it, it won't be citing that. But still it won't be showing it as a plagiarism, but still it would be a plagiarism unless I cite all the sources. Let's say these are all the sources from where I have taken that information. The solution is be novel and original, design your own problem or own problem statement or the research question that you're working on. Express your ideas in your own words. Always paraphrase and never forget to cite. You can use many tools such as, let's say, Zotero, Mendeley. You can use them to manage the citations. There are many citation managers are available. You can use them. Use the quotation marks and cite them if you're directly copying from somewhere. Use the quotation marks and cite them if you're directly copying somewhere. This is a next type of an academic misconduct. Sometimes could be a plagiarism. Sometimes, mostly it is known as an academic misconduct, which is called ghostwriting. Very often we purchase articles written by someone else who agrees not to be included as an author. Sometimes we want to publish many papers in a shorter duration. In that case, what we do is we purchase it from some sort of paper factory in the return of commercial gain, right? So let's say this guy is writing the papers, I buy, and then maybe I pay the authorship. Position. Sometimes we receive the emails, right? First author this much, second author this much. So this is called the ghostwriting, which is an academic misconduct. Students also do that. They often copy. I've seen many of the students, they copy the assignments, projects, term papers, or they pay someone to execute the project for them, right? There are various types of plagiarism available. These days, they buy the subscriptions of the AI tools to write the codes for them. So there are emerging ways available, but they can definitely use AI tools up to a certain extent. We are not saying they cannot use, but they generate the entire code by AI without understanding and present. That is again an academic misconduct. They can use AI tools for understanding, developing the reference code, and then change based on their needs, adding the human value customized for their own application. The next type of plagiarism is called self-plagiarism. In self-plagiarism, when we often copy from our previously published, let's say, articles, book chapters, project proposals, right? We copy from our own work, term papers, reports, which we have previously published. And we sometimes forget to acknowledge our own work. Because when we write, we generally tend towards our own thoughts, which are progressing from our older work. And then we copy. Or often naturally we just write similar to our older articles. So if you have noticed, if I'm writing a new article, my introduction section would be similar to the older article. There could be another misconduct case is, let's say, if I am submitting one paper to the multiple journals or conferences. We'll discuss this in more detail. Framing multiple articles from a single paper by the means of, let's say, minor changes. We'll discuss that in more detail. Submitting the same project proposal to the multiple funding agencies. Students often submit the same project report or term paper assignment to multiple courses. Let's say this happens very often with the PG courses, where there is, such as, let's say, autonomous institutes, where there is a certain amount of overlap between multiple courses. Then in that case, they go and submit the similar project report or project to multiple courses. So that is again a misconduct. Let's take a look at the case. So this is my older paper which has been published. This is my original paper which has been published somewhere. And what I do is I just do the rewriting and I transform this paper into this version with some sort of minor changes, and I publish a second paper with some sort of minor changes. Now, the newer version, there is no novelty in this. Definitely, you can extend, and you can say, let's say 70 to 60% of additional work has been done, and this could be the extended version. However, if there is no addition or extension and it's just merely minor changes, then again it comes under the category of self-plagiarism. Multi-posting, which is again an intentional plagiarism type. To get a quick response, author submits one paper to multiple journals. So let's say if I am a final year PhD student or fourth or fifth year of PhD student, and I don't have publications yet. And to complete the degree, I must require at least 2 or 1 paper, right? Or maybe 2 or 1 journal paper. So what I do is, I have 1 journal paper written. I'll put it on journal 1, then I'll put it on journal 2 and journal 3. And I'll see whichever gives me the first response. I'll take that, and then other 2 places I withdraw, right? So that is unethical. Journals, they have their plagiarism and multi-posting checker. Let's say reviewers. Let's say you got 3 reviewers, right? Reviewer 1, reviewer 2, and reviewer 3, right? And here also, let's say you got those reviewers again repeated. So for an example, let's say again your reviewer 1 is common, right? Your reviewer 1 is, let's say, is common between these 2, correct? So these 2 reviewers are common. Both are same. Now he'll say, I have received this article from 2 journals, journal 1 and journal 2. And they'll report to journals, and then journal will say, you're doing the multi-posting and we are rejecting your articles, plus they may put a future ban also. So it's better not to do this kind of academic misconducts. This is applicable for submitting the project proposal to multiple funding agencies also. When we write a project proposal for funding or grants, requesting for a grant, I may submit to funding agency 1, 2, 3 different funding agencies, and this may result in the multi-posting. Funding agencies, they have their plagiarism and multi-posting checkers. Funding agencies, they have their plagiarism and multi-posting checkers, and consequently, the author may be blacklisted and banned from the future submissions. They may ban us also. So it's better not to do that. There is another version of this misconduct is authors, they generally split one bigger paper into the smaller versions. Version 1, version 2, version 3, and version 1, version 2, version 3, they are kind of a minor incremental works, and this they split and publish. Therefore, there should be at least certain percentage of new contributions. So let's say this is my baseline, and then when I migrate from this to this version, at least there should be, let's say, 50 to 70% of new work has to be done, right? 50 to 70% of new work has to be done. Similarly, here to here, again, I need at least 50 to 70% of a new contribution has to be done. Otherwise, it's plagiarism or academic misconduct. Source plagiarism is a next type. In that specifically, let's say I am a new beginner, and I'm a new student, and when I'm writing an article, I do not understand the meaning of this importance of this reference list. These references are extremely important. The first and foremost thing, it's a credit to a researcher. It helps researchers to increase your citation count. It helps the researcher, first one, to increase the citation count, which is the only measure for their impact, and generally the citation count is used during the professional enhancements or whenever they go for the promotion or apply for funding or publish a new article. People look at that research profile. Second, it helps the publishers to find out the impact factor or cite score, right? If we do not cite, they cannot, when these numbers cannot be accurate. So that's why to give them a credit, this is extremely important. And third one, to avoid the plagiarism and copyrights. to avoid plagiarism and copyright strikes. If we cite them, we can say that we have given the credit, we are referring and we have given the credit. So we can avoid the copyright strikes and plagiarism. We can avoid the copyright strike and plagiarism. So that's why this list is extremely important. And generally newcomers, they do not understand that immediately. And they take some time to understand that. So now going back again to the major discussion. So beginners often they copy from the any published article. So what I do, I have to fill up the list. I just go to any of the paper and copy the entire list and put it in my document. Put it in my document without any relevance, without any citing. Right? I'm not citing. References are just copied without any relevant citing. This is called one kind of mistake which we should avoid. Next type is called inadequate authorship. In research, the constructive collaboration is extremely important and appreciated. The joint work is always appreciated. However, it is important to disclose and acknowledge all the possible collaborations to avoid any kind of conflict of interest. Let's say, for an example, my master student is passing out or a BTech student is passing out. What I do is I remove his name from the article and publish that article under my solo authorship, which could be an inadequate thing or academic misconduct. We have to keep that author as in place and then give them a credit, right? Joint collaborations and co-authorships are always appreciable. We appreciate that, and it is common in academic and industrial research, which is absolutely fine. But we cannot just publish under the solo authorship, or if there are multiple contributions from many people, we have to acknowledge the respective collaborator and include them as a suitable co-author if needed. On the contrary, we cannot keep adding the favorable authors also, right? So we cannot keep adding favorable additional authors. So let's say I add my friend as a co-author, or my wife as a co-author, or my head of the department, or any of the person. I just add them as a co-author without any of their significant contribution. We have to add them if there is a contribution. Definitely, we have to collaborate, which is absolutely fine, but not for just the namesake. We cannot add. For an example, let's say there was an author, could be X, Y, Z. Let's say, for an example, master students, right? Master students, or any of, let's say for my case, it would be MTech. So now he's passing out. So what I'll do, I'll just remove him and claim this entire credit, and I remove him and keep my own name, just a single authorship, and I publish, which is incorrect. I should be the last one because I guide them, and they should be, the student should be there in the beginning. If the student is there, you should say that I should be the first one, right? If you are a student, you should say that that's my article, I should be the first one. Other co-authors can be there, that is okay, because they help us in enhancing the quality of the work. Sometimes there could be an editing co-author also who edits the entire manuscript to enhance the writing part, which is also absolutely fine. Inadequate authorship, such as, let's say, the second type is, I cannot add any author for a mutual benefit. For an example, let's say this XYZ is my friend. It could be friend. I've seen husband wife in the same department, right? So when wife publishes, she adds her husband's name, and when husband publishes, he adds her wife's name, right? So husband and wife's name, or any of the friends, or sometimes, let's say, paid authorship. I take the money and put one person as a co-author, or maybe there could be any mutual gain, right? Maybe promotion, maybe friendship, maybe give and take, unsaid benefits or something, right? So I cannot do that, and that would be an academic misconduct. So I have to just avoid that kind of thing. Collusion. This is called Unethical collaboration among the group of people. Generally, students, they have this kind of network. Generally, they copy from each other lab assignments or term paper, project reports. They copy. Generally, they take it from their friends and copy. These days, ChatGPT has replaced this. Mostly everybody does it from there, but there would be some of them they'll copy from the person, another friend, right? So constructive collaborator is always good, which is okay. We have to work jointly. However, assignments, exams, or written work, they have to be graded individually. They have to be graded individually. We cannot just copy. Collaboration becomes collusion if that's a copying event. So we have to be careful with the students also. They do it very frequently out of fun, and they don't realize that that's an academic misconduct. They'll say, okay, it is okay, everybody does it, so I'll do it. Collusion occurs when a group of people, they establish the unethical research collaboration also. That is applicable to researchers also. They include each others as a co-author. So you might have seen the person publishing, let's say, 30 journal articles in a year. I don't know, it's really difficult to publish 3 articles in a year, but you might see a person publishing 30, 40 articles in a year, right? They come together and they add each other's name. They definitely, I assume that they contribute also a little bit, but without any contribution, they should not add. Cite each other's papers without any relevance to increase the citation count. I cite my friend's paper and my friend will cite my own papers, right? So we increase each other's citation counts. That is again unethical. There should be a relevance. If they are relevant, we must cite, that is okay. But if there is no relevance, there is no point to cite randomly. Sending inadequate thesis. Now, this is really funny. When you have a PhD passing out, right? Let's say your PhD student is passing out. And you have to send his thesis to someone for an evaluation, right? So that's your friend. This is your, let's say, friend. And you will send or recommend these are friends, right? Recommend these are the examiners. And once the thesis goes here, I just go and say them that give light comments, right? Give favorable comments. And that person will agree. And then this PhD student will pass out, right? Now, PhD students on this bridge might be thinking, why is it so? Faculty will take it. Because once you pass out, the faculty's promotion will happen. So faculty's promotion is highly dependent on the PhD student. There would be one checklist. Without that, they cannot move forward. Beyond certain limit, right? So that's why this is called, again, the favorable examiners they ask for. And so we must avoid this kind of thing, right? So one must understand the difference between collaboration and collusion. One must understand the difference between collaboration and collusion, right? So that's one kind of a academic misconduct. Next type is called translation and plagiarism. Now, let's say I have one information or one article published which I found out in some other language, and I translate in English, and I publish. Now, this is called translations plagiarism, right? Translation and plagiarism. You can definitely translate and convert in other language and cite the original information from where you have taken. So whichever the original source, that we have to take and cite that. So you can cite wherever the information is needed, the original information, cite, right? If we do not cite, it's a plagiarism. Plus, the credit is just the translation credit, right? It's not something original. I'm translating that work, and I can take the credit of a translator, which is absolutely fine. But I have to cite. I cannot just say that that's my work. Now we have covered all the intentional plagiarism types, right? All types of intentional plagiarism we have covered. Let's take a look at 6 types of unintentional plagiarism. Let's take a look at 6 types of unintentional plagiarism. Let's begin with the basic definition. Authors commit unintentional plagiarism when they are unaware of the writing ethics, sometimes they are new, or sometimes they miss out of a human error and they commit, which is okay. Sometimes that happens, which is often known as unconscious plagiarism, because we have done that unknowingly. We have copied someone's work, and our intention wasn't that, which is okay. Sometimes it is forgivable. And the major types which we had seen was, let's say, incorrect or misleading citation. Sometimes we incorrectly mention the journal name or author's names, or maybe the page numbers, and then we publish. So that is called the source referencing. That is called the source references. Sometimes we forget to cite, put the quotation mark inside. We forgot to put the footnotes. We just copy paste from multiple sources and stitch them. Often we are not able to understand the content correctly, and we think that we have understood it, and we change the meaning of the original information when we have paraphrased. That could be another error also. Let's take a look at this incorrect citations or source referencing. When citing, when we have, let's say, 100 or 200 of citations to cite, sometimes we cite them incorrectly, which will go to the misleading citations, where we are unable to locate the source, right? So I have given, let's say, incorrect journal's name. Then the reader from that particular citation, let's say this particular journal name I have incorrectly given, then who is reading that, he will not be able to locate this paper. He will not be able to locate that paper, and he will not be able to fetch the information further. That is called source referencing. And sometimes we provide insufficient details, such as, let's say, I forgot the page numbers if I'm citing a book, and if I have not given the page numbers, and the book is of, let's say, 1,000 pages, reader may not be able to find where to look for that information. That is coming under that particular case. Here, let's say, forgot to cite is another case where, let's say, I have paraphrased this entire information, but I have forgotten to cite, and that may happen. So here you can see the information which has been presented here, which is paraphrased. The information which has been presented here, which is paraphrased, the information which has been presented here, which is paraphrased. However, I forgot to cite the original source. This information is taken from this particular source, but I did not cite by a mistake, which is often which happens sometimes, and that is okay. Sometimes that happens, which is okay. Sometimes that happens out of a human error, which is okay. We, in the course of time, whenever we find, we change. Sometimes, let's say, we forgot to quote. When we have taken a direct information from somewhere, we have to cite and quote, put the quotation marks. We have to put the quotation marks and cite. So for an example, let's say if I'm taking a direct copy of a law from somewhere, and for any of the text information, citing the source is just insufficient when it is a direct copy. We cannot just cite. We have to use the quotation marks and put them under the quotation marks followed by the citation. So quotation mark is mandatory. Without that, we cannot go. Otherwise, it would be a false claim. For an example, this information is taken from this particular source. This information is taken from this particular source, and I have cited well, but it's a direct copy, so that cannot be possible. I cannot just take and say this is my information followed by the citation. I have to put a quotation mark there. So this is how it looks like. We have to put the quotation marks. Followed by citation. This is the correct way to avoid the plagiarism, this kind of plagiarism. Now, let's say, often if I am interested in giving some sort of footnote here, some particular information I want to give. Let's say some sort of information is coming from a page numbers, and I want to mention that this is the book, these are the page numbers, and I want to write a particular footnote and I forgot. That is unintentional often, so there is no severe penalty. But if you forgot to put the footnotes, this comes under unintentional plagiarism. Resourceful citer. The authors, they paraphrase the original information, use the quotation marks, and cite everything nicely. The problem with this is there is no novelty. It lacks in the novelty, and the presented article is just the collection of the existing works. The presented article is just the collection of the existing work. The presented article is just the collection of the existing work, right? So there is no novelty in that. It's just the stitching of multiple information from multiple sources. Now, often it is challenging to identify this kind of plagiarism because it looks like a well-researched article. Everything is there. Citations are there, paraphrasing is there, quotation marks are there. Only the novelty part is missing. So Turnitin or any other plagiarism checking software may not be able to detect that. So that's why this type of plagiarism is difficult to identify. Incorrect paraphrasing. Sometimes authors have well cited everything, paraphrased everything, but by mistake they have altered the meaning of the original information. That is called incorrect paraphrasing. Is generally considered as an accidental or unintentional plagiarism because sometimes it's a human mistake. If I'm unable to understand the particular information, I may end up having that kind of plagiarism. How about Wikipedia? People in earlier, let's say 5 years ago, we were dependent on the Wikipedia. We used to copy a lot from the Wikipedia. But Wikipedia is also taking the information from somewhere and it cites. So it's not in a public domain. We have to cite that information which is coming from Wikipedia. And these days, this Wikipedia is replaced by ChatGPT, Gemini AI, Cloud AI, right? There are too many. So these days, Wikipedia is getting replaced by that. However, whenever you use any of this or Wikipedia, you check what are the citations and cite all the sources from where the information is being borrowed by the AI tools or any of that Wikipedia right? So be careful. Even if it is someone else's work, we must refer it, right? Be careful because it's someone else's work. Always we have to refer it. I think I misspoke on it. It has to be always referred. There are certain excuses which students often give, which we have to keep in mind. Let's say the common reasons behind the plagiarism. The first one is lack of time, exam period, lack of awareness or carelessness, temptation to copy and paste, thesis submission in a hurry, peer pressure. They'll say, I don't know how to cite, right? So give them the training, train them well. Maybe it comes with the practice, so you personally teach them well. Everyone copies, so I did. Never buy that argument. No, look for the positive standards, compare with them. Everyone doesn't copy, so I did not copy, right? So put some role models, the good students, those who are not copying, give their example and say you follow them and never copy. I don't know how to write a research paper, so I copied. Very famous, a very common argument. Train them how to write the research paper, train them, and then again, I did not get enough time, so I did not copy. Increase the efficiency. If you're not able to use your time efficiently, student may face that I don't have time. Let's say if a student does 10 minutes job into 100 minutes, right? Still he'll think that he's busy, correct? Still he'll think that he's busy, but he has to work on improving the efficiency, how to increase efficiency, then find time and train themselves, and then do the good research work and cite everything, never copy. I copied from the online material, there was no author. Never read that kind of material if there is no author. I did not record the original information sources and did not cite them. Get the habit of recording these references. Get the habit of recording the references. Take a note. There are digital platforms who take these references, and at the end we can easily cite them. Students, they face because of the poor writing skills, so that's why we encourage them to take this kind of programs or sessions so that they can increase. Fear of failure or discrimination. I have to submit, let's say, quickly to meet the grades or something, then I don't want to fail, I copy. Demand for publications for the award of an academic degree, right? Let's say one PhD or one paper or two papers are needed for completing the degree. Individual professionals, they also copy because of the peer pressure. My colleague is publishing very good number of articles, I have to publish. I start copying. That is one example of the professionals being copied. Desire to be successful. I want to have respect from many people that I published this many journal articles, patents, conference papers, funding. So I start copying, right? For a promotion, some sort of papers would be needed, for some sort of incentive also, right? I want to increase my citation count, I copy. So that's why we keep copying. So these are the reasons. Institutional priorities. Sometimes to win multiple research grants, they force us to write many project proposals, and sometimes we copy. Increase the institutional ranking through the research activities. Let's say institution has a ranking which is lower, they'll say all the faculty members or researchers to align their efforts and publish as much as they can, and that will lead to the copy paste activities. Departmental pressure to improve the performance, right? Establish the international research collaborations. We want to show a lot being an institution, and then we end up copying. Retraction may happen, and that can cause a penalty. Aim of publishing in the prestigious. So there are certain publishers which publish the poor quality articles. They take some sort of money and they quickly publish in 7 days or maybe 5 days, 3 days without any review process. So there is no track. Most of the articles will be of low quality, so never read that kind of articles because mostly they are not peer reviewed. That could be copy pasting event or copyright strikes also may be there, or there could be retractions, everything, right? So that's why we have to be careful. Now, what are the consequences of the plagiarism? What are the consequences of the plagiarism, right? Let's see what are the consequences. What kind of consequences we face if we copy. We have seen the reasons. Now, depending on this plagiarism severity, the penalty may be decided. Depending on the plagiarism severity, the penalty may be decided. If there are mild cases, the penalty would be lesser. Let's say minor text copying or self-plagiarism or accidental plagiarism. Sometimes an apology letter will be fine. We can submit an apology letter or the explanation along with the correction. So let's say my student sometimes, let's say 5 years ago, he might have published one particular article and he changed the meaning of one particular information. And after 5 years, we got a request from the source author that you have changed the meaning of my particular sentence. So we have resubmitted that revision. We accepted that, yes, out of a human error, we changed it and we provided a revision, and they accepted and they replaced the current version with the latest version which they have received from us. So that is okay, mild consequence. It won't create any huge trouble. But there are severe consequences also when we have, let's say, copyrights violation. If someone's product is patented and then I copy, it would be a stealing, right? And could be a severe copying or duplication. Let's say there could be severe consequences such as expulsion from the institute. Institute can kick us out, right? Authors may be blacklisted and banned from the future article submissions They could retract also, right? So my older published article can be retracted based on certain grounds, and they may cancel the degree also, right? They may resign the degree also, even if the student is passed. Let's say a PhD student is passed, has published some sort of junk articles, he got the degree after 3 years, that paper got retracted, then the institute may decide to go back and cancel his degree or ask him to do the compensation. Can be fired from a job also, could be criminal charges if I have let's say copied some sort of copyrights, IPRs, intellectual property rights. If I have violated that policy because of the breach of copyrights, it may result in the legal consequences. It may result in a legal consequences because of the breach of copyrights, and there could be some sort of mild consequences to the severe consequences. Can be resolved through an apology letter. Could be a financial penalty also. The entire profit has to be transferred back if I made any commercial activities, or could be imprisonment also in some sort of severe cases. Could be an imprisonment also, right? Could be an imprisonment also in some sort of severe cases. In most of the academic cases, this is not the severity. This case happens in the industries. Let's say when I am selling the information to the competitors, or if I am doing the insider trading, or maybe many other cases, I'm leaking some sort of information, right? Or I'm copying someone else's patent in my work in the current organization, and then there would be serious consequences. Let's say losing the current job, or future jobs will be denied because of the worse reputation. I may be banned from publishing, or there could be legal proceedings and imprisonment also. Let's see different kind of things. So generally, 0 to 20% or 0 to 10% is the allowed margin for smaller cases. So here there won't be any penalty. Absolutely fine. 10 to 30% or 20 to 30%, sometimes it depends on the publishing platform. They say above 20%, you have to stay below 20%. Above 20%, they ask us to revise and resubmit and bring it down below 20% or below 10%. It's up to the specific funding agency, up to the specific publisher. Between 30 to 50%, we may be asked to withdraw the manuscript. We get the ban also, or we may face the penalty of demotion from the current position if they escalate that to the current organization. Our current organization stop the promotions, or they may demote also. They degrade our pay scale also. Often, we may be banned from guiding the PhD students as a supervisor. Now, you know the impact of all these things being a faculty, right? So, or can be fired from a job in a severe case. So, these are several kind of severity if it is greater than 50% or greater than kind of beyond certain range. And if we do it repeatedly, consequences will be severe. Now, always you check the plagiarism, and I personally prefer below 10%. AI score, and plagiarism index, or you can say similarity index, less than 10%. That's what I personally prefer. Right? Use Turnitin is a good software. Copyright infringements on images. Turnitin doesn't catch the copyrights infringements or copying activities in images. So images, be careful. Always you manually check. Draw your own images and cite them from wherever they have taken. Or you use the licenses. You ask publisher to issue a license, written license, or sometimes you have to pay image reusage charge also, right? So be careful with that. Tips to eschew the plagiarism, to avoid the plagiarism. There are several tips which we follow. The best way is to always cite, paraphrase, cite. Best way is to always paraphrase and cite. Be original always. Express your own idea in your own work. If you are having an image in any of the work, you must cite that. diagram, you must cite that. Firstly, you draw in your own word, in your own way, by putting your contribution, redraw. And if you have to use the same image, check if it is in a Creative Commons open source licenses, or maybe Creative Commons CC 4.0, something like that, right? If it is open source or allowed in a public domain, you can directly copy with the citations or attributions, right? So this is taken from here and I've cited. Now, you have to always ensure that if you are copying directly, you have to put the quotation marks followed by the citation. Never miss without that. Never cite, never copy without the quotation marks and citations. How to cite the sources in PowerPoint presentations or Beamer slides, any of the slides. When you're presenting in research article, we cite all the reference papers at the end, may create the list there at the end, and we cite them wherever they are coming in the text. However, in slides, we cannot just cite on the last page and say, thank you, these are my references. That is not the way to cite in the slides. Whenever the information is being used, that information has to be cited here. That information has to be cited here, and these are the sources. You have to cite here at the bottom. Cite at the bottom of this slide. All the sources have to be cited at the bottom of the slide, right? You can cite in different format like this, which is up to you, or put brackets, up to you how you want to cite, which is absolutely fine. If you have an image, cite at the bottom that this image is been taken from this particular source. We cannot just put a reference list at the end, because the viewer or your audience who is looking at this image and he wants to find out from where that is coming, then this is the correct place where you can take a look when you're presenting to someone. Otherwise, it creates trouble to identify from where it is coming. You can cite in any ways of your choice. Let's say put it in a bracket, or up to you. Quotation marks, when you are using the quotation copied sentence, put the quotation mark, cite at the bottom of the slide. We are talking about the citations for the slides. Cite at the bottom of the slide, right? So always cite here like this. Differentiate others' ideas from yours. Clearly have a boundary. Always reference and cite. Identify and note down all the sources, and that will help to save your time. Plan your time well. Plan your time well, because the novel writing, it demands time, right? In searching the sources, reading them, making the notes, thinking, right? And then you write. Sometimes you do translation, right? So that needs time. Plan well. Otherwise, you rush and copy. Consult your supervisor, discuss with them, take their guidance, right? What is their expectation, and take their experience for your advantage. Avoid secrets and be honest always. Don't be afraid if you have, don't be afraid to admit if you don't know something. Always say, I don't know, that's okay, and we'll keep improving. We'll improve. Admit if you have made a mistake and work on the solutions. Never hide. Develop a reading habit, because we learn when we read. When we read the different research articles, we learn. And when we learn, we write. That gives us a hand and avoid the plagiarism, right? If you're not sure whether you need to reference that, always cite it. In case of confusion, always cite it, so that will avoid plagiarism. If the plagiarism is exposed, admit it and work on the solution. Provide the revision or accept that. Could be a human error, which is okay. If you're already trying to cover up, let's say, some sort of error, don't wait until someone exposes you. Go ahead and take a proactive step and then change it. Instruct the students to employ multi-stage writing process. Direct them to demonstrate the work as they progress through the writing process, right? Ask them intermediate progress, because after a month or two they'll come and submit a copied version if you're not checking in between. So check in between. I repeat, sometimes the students are inexperienced, so we have to train them. Once they are trained, you give them a free hand, which is okay, but not before that. So check them, identify accidental plagiarism and intentional plagiarism, and advise them to modify that. Instruct the students to eliminate the identified plagiarism. So whenever you find any plagiarism instances, ask them to change it or modify it. In the gathering and planning stage, instruct them thoroughly and make a detailed planning that before even they start writing, because when they plan nicely, they'll stick to the clock and they have plenty of time at the end to revise the paper for multiple times. That helps to reduce the plagiarism, right? Instruct the students to gather the required literature and note down all the respective sources also. Expect students to frame a comprehensive blueprint for the entire paper. Ask them to get the entire structure and make them aware of the plagiarism. And always ask them to integrate your suggestions and comments in the revised version. Cross-check that they are addressing all your questions, comments, concerns about the plagiarism and any other technical questions or any other content-oriented questions. During the revision stage, encourage them to produce the significant contribution. So let's say if they are progressing from first draft to second draft, ask them to bring, let's say, 20 to 30% of additional writing contribution, right? 20 to 30% additional contribution. The draft should come up with that enhanced quality in writing, in technical editions, or in content-oriented edition. It's up to you. Mark draft with adequate sequence numbers and in the logical flow, so that we can check where the students are going, so that we can continuously, and student will also not fall behind. He'll also be consistently progressing and completing his work on time. Cut down plagiarized paragraphs, lines, sentences, diagrams, music, videos, data. Check video, music, images, diagrams, right? Check everything, equations, that they are not being copied from anywhere. In editing stage, employ the last minute review process and to catch the final errors and revise them. Instruct students to restate the information concisely and teach them the paraphrasing skills. These days, this is taken care by AI tools. So we have to just ensure that they are citing well, and this they have added the human value here. In research papers, guide students to have a final check always before they submit. Check everything which we have just discussed. Perform extensive peer review. Ask them to write and then send it. Maybe a senior scholar, you can ask them to send it to the senior scholar. He will also go through once. Then I can also go through once. Then the quality can come up, right? Always assign or approve the topics. Do not let them randomly select, because they'll come and select some sort of copied work from somewhere. They find something on internet which has already been done. They think that, okay, I'll take it up and then present. So that's why always you decide some of the list of the topics and then ask them to take it from that list. Do not allow last minute changes. They'll come and say at the end that, okay, now I want to change my topic. I'm not finding something. So you can do that in first few years of your PhD student, but not in third year onwards, because that will result in copy paste other things. So you can directly say, now, if you want to change your topic after third year or after the completion of second year, it's better to drop that degree, because there is no point to continue. So we have to sometimes be harsh, and then so always ask them to rewrite and enhance the writing quality to eliminate the plagiarism, right? Teach the culture of the earned trust. So that's all we have today. About the plagiarism. Comprehensively, we have discussed all the types of plagiarism, and I wish you would follow these guidelines in your research work. Thank you very much for your time.